This is an emergency announcement from the SCP Foundation. This is not a test. I repeat, this is not a test. We have detected an opening in the energy field. Something is coming through. Everyone needs to be on high alert. We don't know. This is an alert from the SCP Foundation. Great news. An opening in the energy field has been detected and something is coming through.
Hello. 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 Hi, and welcome to the No Sleep Theater. I'm your host, DB Keebler, the Collector. It's great to finally be here in person. Oh, holy crap, this is kind of amazing. It's so easy to move in this dimension. We don't have air where I come from. We have what's best described in your world as a mix between copper and cotton candy. This is outstanding. Hey, Usher! Usher! Did you make it through?
Yes, Master. I am here. Not sure where, though.
Are you feeling this? Isn't this wild?
Oh, yes, Master. The lack of resistance in my mobility is quite pleasing.
Oh yeah. So, as I was saying, welcome to the No Sleep Theater Collector's Vault. I am DB Keebler, the Collector. For a while now, I've been communicating with your world through a limited internet connection. My people have an ability that is unique to your world. We are a form of empath. When we read a true tale, we are able to transport through time and space to observe the events in the story. I use my ability to take a souvenir from every story I read. These souvenirs are a type of totem that holds the empathic energy generated by the people experiencing the story, and you find people viewing this video. This energy is what will keep my connection to your world alive. Recently, there was a very interesting event that took place. Tara A Devlin wrote about an experience revolving around a young woman being murdered and her significant other taking the investigation into their own hands. I felt such a strong pull towards the insane amount of energy it produced that I had to read it, even though I was not recording it for the viewers. The power emitted was so strong that not only was I able to observe the story, but I actually had an effect on it. This experience is what finally put my power levels over the top to be able to breach your dimension. My biggest regret though, I was so in awe of the situation, I never got a souvenir. But because of this, I thought, what better way to premiere my first video in your dimension than by telling the very story that helped bring me here? So come along with me as we discover the secrets that lay in the shadows. Voyage-me!
Master? A little help? Drat. What a prick. Oh well. Anyway, if you enjoyed tonight's video, don't forget to press the like and subscribe. And while you're at it, press the bell icon to get alerted every time we upload a new video.
In the Shadows by Tara A Devlin. Have you ever been so disillusioned with the world that you wanted to sit back and watch it burn? Because I have. A man can only take so much before he cracks, and a few weeks ago, I found out what my limit was. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning. I'm from a town so small and remote, you won't find it on any map. The only industry we have is mining, and like every other physically able male in town, that's where I worked. At this particular day, I woke up at the crack of dawn, kissed my wife on the cheek, and told her not to worry about dinner. I'll bring something special home. Work was, as always, shit. It takes a special kind of person to enjoy mining. It's dark, it's cramped, and after a while it takes a toll physically as well. A few weeks earlier, we found out the company was downsizing, and that had everyone particularly on edge. And yet despite this, I got to work to find several men had decided to call in sick. It was like they all decided to get drunk the night before and not bother to show up to work, which meant we had to pick up their slack. I hated my job at the best of times, but on this day, missing several key workers, it was hell. It was 8 p.m. by the time I managed to drag myself home, but instead of my loving wife greeting me with a kiss after a long, hard day's work, I was greeted with her dead body, bloodied and mangled in the middle of the living room floor. Have you ever wanted to watch the world burn? Because I have. The letters E.I. were written in blood on the floor next to her head. In her hand was a piece of paper. I carefully removed it, my mind still not quite comprehending the sight before me. I was in a daze. Maybe I'd hit my head in the mine and this was all just a coma dream. I'd wake up any minute now and my wife would be smiling down at me, the only thing that mattered in this shitty world, and she'd chastise me for how stupid I was while smothering me in kisses. But I didn't wake up, and she was still lying on the floor in front of me, her light extinguished. I looked at the paper she was holding. It was a map, but I couldn't tell what of. There were several small X marks, a larger X, and then one even larger still. There was nothing to distinguish what it might be. No streets, no landmarks, nothing. Just a line, splitting most of the map in half. The smaller X's filled the bottom of the map, while the bigger X was in the top right, and the other somewhere in the middle top half. What did it all mean? An hour later, after the shock had worn off, I called the police. I should preface this by saying the police in our town, all three of them, were particularly inept.
Do you know who did it? Did you see anyone? Do you have any enemies? Was the door locked? And what time did she die?
If I knew all these things, I wouldn't need the police now, would I? I considered telling them about the map, but when one of the officers said to me,
We'll look into it.
I decided against it. They didn't care. My wife wasn't the only murder case they had on their hands. Word was going around town that several people had died recently. There was a serial killer in our sleepy little town, and my wife was just another piece of paper on the pile. I called my boss the next morning to let him know what happened.
I don't care. Get your ass down that hole or you're fired. There's plenty of other good men gunning for your job right now.
So that was that. My wife was dead. No one cared. It was a small town, but it also had a long, somewhat questionable history. Most of the families had lived there for generations. But it wasn't like those tight-knit communities you often hear about. No, in our town everyone kept to themselves. Just like the harsh environment surrounding us. It was do or die. The mine didn't stop just because I lost the love of my life. A death in the family was no excuse for a day off work. I was still physically able, so I'd best do my job or consider it gone. I probably should have just quit. I was an hour into my shift and I knocked over a lantern. I set several support beams on fire. It was a miracle no one died, but the entire team had to be evacuated, and the operation shut down while emergency crews checked that everything was safe to continue. A small flick of my wrist had cost the company several thousands of dollars, half a day of work, and the loss of some vital equipment. They were already looking for an excuse to get rid of people. I was fired.
Don't worry about those assholes.
I was in the locker room taking off my boots when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Jack, another miner I'd known since childhood. He was a few years younger than me, not that you could tell by looking at him. He looked rough and weathered, old beyond his years. A lifetime in the mines did that to you.
They'll get what's coming to them. They always do.
He smiled and tried to reassure me. Yeah, sure. But they wouldn't. They never did. Corporations like this used us until they bled us dry. Then they tossed our empty husks while the next suckers were already being wheeled in. I was a number. Jack was a number. We were all just numbers. And after dedicating my entire working life to this mine, I was gone, just like that. All so they could save a little money. I stumbled home, having lost both my wife and my job in less than 24 hours. No one cared. Heavy snow began to fall, and by the time I reached the house, it was already piled at the front door. A large blood puddle, my wife's blood. A reminder that she had even existed at all, still stained on the living room floor. It was something no one told you about. How difficult it was to get blood out of something. The map was sitting on the coffee table. I picked it up and began examining it. It was blank, nothing on the front or back other than a single wavy line through the center and the X marks. I sat down at the computer and pulled up Google Maps. There we sat, on the edge of civilization in all our insignificant glory. We didn't even have a street view, and the closest I could zoom, it was just a pixelated mess. After an hour or so of zooming in and out and examining the entire town for something that might match up to the map, I finally found it. Or at least, I thought I did. It was difficult to tell. The line through the middle seemed to correspond with the large forest on the outskirts of town. The large X mark in the top right measured up roughly with the mines. The smaller marks down at the bottom appeared to be houses. There were 12 marks. It was difficult to tell if the map was a scale or not, but I couldn't find my house on there. Maybe he hadn't marked it off yet. I just left the large X up at the top of the map. It was somewhere deep in the forest. Was that the killer's hideout? Snow pounded against the window. The snowstorm outside was picking up. I turned the computer off, stepping around my wife's bloodstain, and poured myself a drink. First thing in the morning, I would set out. I would find my wife's killer, even if it killed me in the process. A large part of me no longer cared if it did. The next morning I set out. Heavy snow had fallen while I slept, and it made it difficult to progress. But I pushed on. I never liked the cold. I always wanted to go and live somewhere tropical. That seemed like another world all the way out here in the middle of nowhere. A few hours had passed when I realized I had no idea where I was, and no idea where I was going. The map was most definitely not to scale, and I didn't even know what I was looking for. But at the same time, it didn't matter. I had nothing left. If all that was waiting for me in the woods was cold and starvation, I would take it. It beat being alone in the house, stuck thinking about how my life had gotten to this point. Why didn't we leave when my wife wanted us to? She worked at the local bakery. Her dream was to open her own themed restaurant in the big city somewhere, but we just didn't have the money. Her job paid a pittance, and mine was no better. Even if we wanted to move, there was no way to sustain ourselves. We barely had enough to pay our bills as it was, let alone have any savings. But what if we had tried? Maybe we wouldn't have been stuck in this dead-end town. Maybe she wouldn't be dead. Every time I remembered the sight of her, laying there on the floor covered in her own blood, it tore my heart out. That was no way to die. Not for her. Not for anyone. Had the others died the same way? Why didn't more people know about it to begin with? It was a small town. Something as big as a serial killer should have been on the town news. Dark thoughts clouded my mind. The disinterested tone of the officers at the scene of my wife's death. The way they dismissed me as though they were just writing another parking ticket. The meandering question that went nowhere and answering nothing. There was a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. A light up ahead drew me from my thoughts. Before I knew what was happening, there was a bang, and I was on my knees back in the snow. A ripple spread out through the trees, and snow flew into the air. Ignoring the pain, I got up and ran towards the sound. A man walked out of the trees towards me. At least, he looked like a man. He was wearing goggles and a respirator with a fedora hat, but the rest of his face was white, almost featureless. What the hell? Not quite hell, but hello. He looked around. Can't say I was expecting to see anyone else all the way out here, but here we are. Name's Keebler, DB Keebler. And you are? I opened my mouth a few times, but no sound came out. Never mind, it's not important. I'm looking for something. Not quite sure what it is yet, but no doubt I'll know it when I see it. I'll let you get back to what you were doing. Who knows, maybe we'll meet again someday. He walked off, leaving me to watch him go, speechless. What the hell? A few meters ahead, I found a large hole in the snow. It was as though he had appeared out of thin air, like a Terminator or something. I debated chasing him, but I had more pressing matters. The large X was at the top of the paper. I could only assume that meant it was near the edge of the forest. I stopped for lunch, even though I wasn't particularly hungry, and pressed forth again. Part of me wondered just what the hell I was doing. Another part of me didn't care. Even if I died, so be it. It beat living in this deadbeat town full of deadbeat people anymore. But if I was going to die, I at least wanted to take down the asshole who took my wife from me first. It was the least I could do. Several hours into wandering the forest later, I finally found it. There was a large clearing, and towards the end of the clearing was a 2-story cabin. This had to be it, no doubt about it. I slunk around the edge of the trees. No one was home. I grabbed the door handle, heart pounding in my throat, and turned. It opened with a soft click. No one was inside. The walls were lined with photos, like the type you might see taken by a private investigator. I recognized most of the people. They were folks I'd grown up with, folks I'd gone to school with, and worked in the mines with. There was a number by each one. I reached the end of the line, and my heart froze. It was my wife. The number 13 was beside her head. It wasn't EI. It was 13. She was the 13th victim. There was an empty space next to her photo with 14 scrawled in marker. It was empty. There was still one more victim left. A branch snapped outside. I ran upstairs and hid myself as the door opened. A solitary figure stepped inside. He was wearing a bright yellow hood, his face hidden beneath it. The figure dropped a bucket with a loud thud that echoed throughout the cabin. Red liquid sloshed all over the floor. He grabbed a nearby mop and began painting a large circle, filling it with intersecting lines that didn't quite make a pentagram. He removed something from around his neck and placed it in the center. It was difficult to tell from the second floor, but it looked like an amulet, a smaller version of what he'd just drawn on the floor. He began chanting. It wasn't English, or even Latin. I couldn't tell what language it was. It didn't matter. All I knew was that some weird shit was going on, and I didn't want to be around for the end of it. I shifted back, and the floor creaked beneath my weight. The man looked up. Busted. I will admit, in the moment, I wasn't thinking rationally at all. When I realized I knew he was there, my mind went blank. I saw the blood on the floor, and I saw my wife's photo on the wall like a trophy, and the emptiness in my soul filled with seething rage. I wasn't afraid, not in the slightest. Oh, the contrary. I was angry. In an instant, I wanted him to know I was there. I wanted him to feel the same fear my wife must have felt before he killed her. I wanted him to be the one begging on his knees for his life. And just like he denied my wife, I would deny him. They say you see red when you're full of anger. All I saw was a haze as I descended the stairs and barreled into him, knocking the knife he was pulling out of his hand. We hit the ground. He was strong, but he was no match for my rage. My fist pummeled him in the face, over and over, staining his yellow hood with red. A metallic tang filled the air, making me nauseous. The killer began to laugh, and I realized he wasn't even fighting back.
What's so funny?
His laugh turned into a choke.
Why did you kill my wife?
I hit him again. The rage burned even hotter. Now he was mocking me? No, he didn't get to do that. There would be no satisfaction for him. There was none for my wife.
Are you working with that thing I saw out there?
He coughed again, and as this hood slid back off his face, I finally saw who it was. It was Jack, from the mines. His face was bleeding and beginning to swell, but it was undoubtedly Jack. My rage turned to confusion, before morphing once again into something red-hot and seething.
Thing? I don't know.
He coughed, drowning in his own blood.
I haven't called it. Not yet.
Called it? Called what?
You don't even know, do you? Of course you don't. I'm sorry about your wife, but...
I hit him. I hit him so hard I heard the bone in my hand snap and pain tore up my arm. He took a moment and then looked at me as if it was nothing.
But this town is rotten. You know, and I know it. We all know it. But no one will do anything to fix it. Well, I will.
Fix it? What do you mean, fix it?
I didn't know if it was the anger blinding me, but it was like he was speaking another language. I understood the words, but I couldn't comprehend the intent. His eyes glanced over at the amulet.
I found it. In the mines. Something's coming, and it's too late to stop it. I just need...
He coughed, spitting blood on my face.
One more death.
He smiled.
You should get out while you can. It's going to cleanse the town. You don't want to be around for that.
I saw his hand moving too late. He fumbled for the knife. As I went to grab it, it was already gone. I braced myself for the pain I knew was coming, throwing up my arm to cover my face, but there was nothing. I opened my eyes. Jack was dead, the knife sticking out of his neck. He had killed himself. He intended himself to be the 14th victim all along. Blood trickled out and mingled with what he had painted on the floor. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, but slowly, the floor began to rumble. I stood up, backing towards the front door. We didn't get earthquakes out here. The rumble grew louder, and then I saw it. A black mist was forming in the center of the room, above Jack's body.
I watched it, frozen. I couldn't move even if I wanted. And as the thing swirled and began to take shape, I wanted nothing more. The fear growing in me was so primal that I felt I would tear my own eyes from my sockets if escape was impossible, just so I wouldn't have to see the thing that was forming before me. The handle finally turned. I fled into the forest. The woods were dark. How long had I been there? The earth continued to rumble beneath my feet, and terror gripped my very soul. I ran blindly, branches painfully leaving their mark on my face and neck, but I didn't care. There was a large bang, like an explosion within the earth itself. I stopped dead in my track as an ungodly roar ripped through the forest. It echoed all around me, and it echoed deep within me. It was here. There was the sound of something tearing through the forest in the direction of the town at full speed, and the world felt silent.
But this town is rotten. You know, and I know it. We all know it. But no one will do anything to fix it. Well, I will.
I swallowed. They didn't know what was coming, and there was no way to warn them. But then I realized I didn't care. There was nothing left there for me anymore. Soon, there would be nothing left at all. And it was nothing more than they deserved. I just kept walking in the opposite direction.
Ah! Oh, I got right in the path of whatever that was right before the story ended. I thought I wasn't going to make it back. Oh man, and narrating a story I'm already in gave me a bit of a headache. Okay, anyways, that was a hell of an experience. Can't really blame Jack for what he did. He found a way to save his town and took a stab at it. In the end, it looks like he succumbed to summoning sickness. Now let's see what we were able to retrieve from this tale. Ho-Sem. Wow, it's the killer's map. What an incredible addition to my collection. And I know right where to put it.
I'll tell you where you can put it.
What was that?
Nothing. I was just asking if you would like me to hang it for you.
I'm sure you did. I got it. If you enjoyed the experience as much as I did, make sure you press the like button and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Vous n'y êtes pas J.